like, like skateboarders, like, we're trendsetters. I mean, I'm going to just straight up say it. I mean, almost every trend that's happened, in the last 15, 20 years has been like started by skaters, whether it's like the baggy pants from the 90s that are back now, or the hip bags that we wear that like all the kids in like the school, like the middle schools are wearing now, or like even like there's a, like when I started the shop, it was 5-panel hats, but we all started that, it's like we do it and then it gets adopted to like mainstream culture and kind of blows up,
JD, what is going on, my brother?
Yeah, how you doing? Good morning. It's a nice Tuesday morning. It's raining a little bit, but
Yeah, dude.
made the walk down, ready to talk some shop.
Yeah, bro, I appreciate you coming in. You've been on my list for a minute. I've been to your shop on multiple occasions. I have boards in the office. There's a cool Reading board down the hallway. I've taken my kid in there. She's gotten set up by you guys in there. But I remember the first time I met you, and I don't know if you remember, probably don't, but this was years ago. And you still had like the dreams of a Reading skate park on a piece of like cardboard or like, the board we used in school. And you just went off on this tangent and like, you were like, yeah, we're trying to build this park. And you showed me that you busted out this little thing and I'm looking at it and I'm like, dude, that's pretty cool, man. It was pretty awesome. I remember going home that night and talking to my wife about it, saying, I just met this dude that owns Holistic and he is talking to me about building this really cool skate park right here in Reading. And that just always stuck with me. And, years have gone by and now I'm like, I got to get that cat in here and find out what his story is. Like, how that whole thing came to be.
Yeah, I mean, where do you want to start at?
Well, I guess, the first question I always like to ask everyone is, where you from, bro? Are you born and bred here or imported?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm born and bred here, so that's kind of like the main theme I think of Holistic, and I think of like the skate park project is I was born and raised in Shillington, Pennsylvania. Lived here my whole life, and then graduated school from Governor Mifflin, and I went to Temple University in Philadelphia. So I did like a 5-year stint in Philly. I ended up getting a double degree in anthropology and history, and I worked in the cultural resource management field for a little bit, which is basically like construction archaeology.
Right on.
So, nowadays, you guys listening on the podcast, when you go to Philly, you go to like Northern Liberties, it's completely changed from 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I was in school. And we used to be digging under 95. Like they were doing expansion there. And it's like what I did for a job is like we would go in, dig test sites all over the area underneath 985 where they were going to like expand the highway. And if we found anything of value, whether it was like colonial or Native American, like we just shut it down. And that's where we worked for like the next like 2 years. So I did that for a little bit. And then, I liked the job. I liked the people I worked with. But the company that I was working for, it wasn't offering like healthcare or anything like that. And the only way you could get it was basically to become like a crew chief. But like, it's an upper management position.
Right on.
They can send you on the road for months at a time. And it's basically like you're paying rent for your apartment in Philly and you're living in Montana for like 3 weeks, of a month, So I kind of like talked to some of my supervisors and they were like, like if you have any other ideas and you're kind of feeling iffy about it, like do it now, So right around that time, I was coming back home on the weekends to help the skateboard shop that was here before me, which was called Pocket Aces, and it was run by this lady Rachel, who was really cool and pretty instrumental in like the scene about I'd say 15 years ago. Like she opened her shop originally in Sinking Spring, and then after a year and a half, 2 years, she moved to West Reading, to the location that Holistic is in right now. And I would come back on the weekends, kind of like help her place orders, help like grow the shop team, send them to competitions, stuff like that. And when she came to us, she was like, I'm going to shut down the shop. Like, would you like to buy it? And she offered it to me and my friend Dan. And we kind of like juggled who was going to take it over. Mm-hmm. And then it ended up like Dan couldn't come up with the cash in time. And, he called me and he's like, I can't do it, dude. It's going to go out of business, And that was right around the time when I was talking to my previous job, like managers and stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like, I saved up some money from that. Like, Rachel talked to me and we struck a good deal and I was like, look, I'll take it over. So I basically like liquidated all of the equipment and all like the rent and everything and took over the lease. And I decided to change the name to Holistic. And yeah, my friend Mike Perry, he's a really awesome graphic designer. I hit him up and he was just starting his career too. And I was like, look, can you make me a logo? And he drew the Holistic logo 350 times from scratch. And the one you see on Penn Avenue today is the one he drew.
That was 351.
Yeah. So
I want to go back to the test site job you had. I didn't want to cut you off, but I got to go back and go.
Completely fine.
So did you find anything cool, man, digging out there for, what was it, like 10 years you said you were out there for?
So I graduated after 5 years, and that was like it was my internship turned into like full-time job, like right after graduating college. So I worked that job for I'd say about 8 months to a year, like somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, you know, my coworkers have found cool stuff. Like there was definitely, we shut down right by, if you guys know Sugar House Casino, I think it's in. Yeah. So Sugar House is where we were working, basically, before they built Sugar House.
Okay.
Like we were digging test sites all around that area, and they found an old British colonial fort. Like when like the British kicked everybody out of Philadelphia, like the colonial army and everything. Like George Washington was like banished from Philadelphia, so they went to Valley Forge to like hold up for the winter. And yeah, like when they kicked out the colonial army, they basically built like forts around the city's perimeter, you know, old city and everything.
Yeah.
So we found an old colonial fort, which was pretty cool, and that kind of like shut everything down for a while, because like once they build those support pillars over the highway, like anything below ground, like it's gone, you know, the entire trace of it. You can't go back, and like once you dig down, it's like, I like to tell people who are new to like archaeology or like CRM, it's like, imagine having like those Jello puddings, you know, like the vanilla and the chocolate and the vanilla.
Yeah.
And when you put your spoon in, it changes the color, you know?
Sure.
That's basically the earth. It's all strata, you know, like when you dig down, there's like levels to it, you know, layers. And if you stick like, you know, a shovel down, or like you take a backhoe and dig down, it mixes those layers, and you can't tell where the artifacts are coming from anymore.
Okay.
And that's why like archaeology, like in CRM, is so important, because we're digging it down layer by layer. So if we find something like 5 layers down, it tells you what period it's at without having to carbon date it and do all the extra steps, you know?
And you can tell the difference by looking at it, how many layers it is?
Oh, yeah. Like if you ever dig like a pool in your backyard, or like a hole for something, like you can definitely see, if you cut a straight line down, you'll start seeing the earth change, like from different stratas. So like it goes from like, you know, you can actually tell periods in history too, because like the industrial period, you'll see like a layer of like almost like soot. And that's from like all the trains coming into the stations all the time. They're blowing smoke out from the coal, and it creates like almost like a coal layer, and it's kind of cool, because then, you know, if you find something from there, it's usually like, oh, you got something from the 1800s or something, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's kind of gnarly, but like the best stuff to find usually comes from privies. So it's like where people were using the bathroom back in the day. So what they would do is they, you know, before we had plumbing, they would dig like a giant hole in the ground, and then basically do their business, or go into a chamber pot, and then they just toss it into this hole.
Okay.
So when you find these things, it almost looks like a well, you know, but it's it's all mixed then, you know, because it's like there's no strata. So that's how you know you found a privy. And that's where you find like old bottles, you find like, you know, old gun parts. Like it's cool. Like,
so people just used to dump stuff down that hole that was used for your business?
Yeah, completely. I mean, like think about it. There was no trash pickup back then. You know, they would just dump these giant privy holes and just go out and use their business and just keep filling them up, you know, and then they would dig a new one, you know. So you'll find like, you know, old mussel shells that people ate. You'll find like, you know, remains of like mollusks and stuff like that from when they fished and everything. So that's kind of like how you can kind of tell like what the dietary stuff was going on at the time. But yeah, where Sugar House was, there was a giant glass factory back in the day in the 1800s or like late 1700s. It was called Dietville, and my company uncovered it, and they found like all these cool artifacts. Like there was this little moon man that, like, if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. But like basically like a porcelain moon, like it's really creepy looking, like, you know. And then they found a glass bottle with Ben Franklin's like imagery on it, which was like one of the earliest like pictures of him, you know, besides like the paintings that we would see in museums and stuff like that. They took his likeness, and when they made the mold for the bottles, like they would pour the mold and then clasp it together, and that would make the bottle. And you can tell because it has like a line going around it. Right. And then Ben Franklin's face was on the one end. So
was that like, was he selling something?
I think it was like Dietville made bottles for like tonics and stuff like that. Like this guy, he was like a doctor, you know, but he basically made glass bottles, and like his tonics didn't really sell well, but the glass bottle industry like took off. So he was just basically one of the biggest glass makers in Philadelphia at the time.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so like bottling stuff for everyone, you know, like in late 1700s, early 1800s.
So it's like early branding.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like the first big job that I was on, you know, and then did a lot of jobs where like I went out in like the coal country. Like we basically worked on the pipeline. So like I would get like a GPS system with my boss, and we would just walk like miles, and just every 15 feet dig like a small little test hole, and then just keep walking. And that was like kind of gnarly, because it's like, you know, I grew up in the woods. Like I'm from Pennsylvania and stuff like that. Like I moved after Shillington, moved to Moton, and it's kind of closer to the woods. And I would go hiking sometimes, but like this was like deep hiking, you know, like, you know, you're walking like the whole workday, like 7 hours, just,
Right on.
following this like little like GPS telling you where the pipeline's going to go, the XL pipeline, and like where you have to like dig, because if we find anything of value, like an arrowhead or something, like it's like you're shutting it down.
So then when you shut it down, if you find like an arrowhead, how long does it take to get this bad boy back up again?
I mean, the Dietville site took about, I believe it took 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
So they have to completely excavate everything, document it all, shoot pictures, like make sure everything's out, and then they can say like, good, it's clear, like we have like historical documentation, everything's taken, and then they'll let the company come in, like bulldoze it, fill it in, and then build the concrete pad over top of it to build like whatever they want over it. So we worked actually with PennDOT. So like our company was actually subsidized by PennDOT. So like my paychecks really came from PennDOT because
Right
like
on.
we're helping the highway kind of expand and build, but like they can't just come in there and see something in the ground and just pave over it.
So when you say they excavate everything, does that mean like, so before they let that company come back in, all the, I guess, historical peeps come in, do they just literally grab everything that they can out of it and then the rest gets covered up?
Yeah, it's like, so CRM, cultural resource management, is like, think about like, I like to tell people it's like construction archaeology. It's like a lot faster paced. So like when you're doing like the academic archaeology, it's a lot slower. Like you're taking it like layer by layer.
Mm-hmm.
The CRM is like, you're just going in with shovels and you're just digging up as much as you can because you have to get it out fast because you're not like on a timeline.
All right.
Like you can't hold the highway up for like 10 years, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it has to get built. So like I think like the way they work it out is like PennDOT comes to like the company and gives them like a window and they say like if you find something, like you have like a year to excavate and like find what you need to get,
And then that's it.
That's it, They can only do so much. I mean, if it's something super historical, I'm sure there's like permits they can pull that like, expand it to like 2-3 years or whatever, but yeah, the end goal is like to get it out of the way and get it cataloged and dated back in Harrisburg so it can go to museums or like get in the collection. And then, when they build their pads or they build like the highway pillars and stuff like that, it doesn't like destroy it forever and there's no historical record anymore.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. I love history. I'm a big like U.S. history guy, so like I'm big into all those things, and so it's cool that you had like maybe a little piece of this like finding like
yeah,
all
like
these great things.
Yeah, it's like I never found anything too crazy. I mean, there would always be like when you found something really awesome, like everyone would stop digging and like all get together and like look at it,
Right.
And I never had one of those moments, but like I was around people that like found cool stuff. Like someone found the end of like a flintlock rifle that like had like the trigger and stuff. Obviously the wood wasn't there anymore, but
Right.
like it's cool to find stuff like that
Yeah,
because it's
dude.
like what it is,
Mhm.
or like a bayonet or something.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Right on, dude. So fast forward, you're hanging out. You gave all your cash to have a chance at running Holistic.
Yeah, so I basically bought all the fixtures and I took over the lease, and it was a really, amazing. I mean, Rachel, I can't thank her enough. Like, she like set me up pretty much for success. She basically didn't want the shop to shut down, but she just needed to like step away from it, And she was like a mother of 3, so it's like I think her kids were getting a little bit older. They were getting out of high school, getting to high school age and everything, and it was kind of like needed to focus more on the family kind of thing. So, I kind of like got set up for success because she left me, in the purchase was like all the equipment fixtures and then all of the old inventory. So I kind of started the shop off already having inventory on hand, having the fixtures and everything, and then all I really had to do was just change the logo, like incorporate it as an LLC and change the business and kind of like create my own. But I think the biggest thing was just like, she signed a 3-year lease at that location at 516 Penn Ave where we are now, and just I only had to take it over for a year. So I was like, look, if I fail, I'm only paying a year's worth of rent, so I'm not going to be that much in the hole.
Right on.
So we opened up, I think our start date was August 9th, 2012.
Wow, it's been that long. So it's 10 years.
Yeah, it's 10 years. We just celebrated 10 years this year. So
Right on, dude.
yeah, it was a trip. Had a really cool event. Had a bunch of pros come out from California and skate the local skate park with us. It was pretty cool. So.
That's awesome, man. So what's the why skate shop?
So like I grew up like a little backstory before going to college and my other job. Before I did the skate shop, like I started skateboarding when I was like 9, I would say. Like a couple neighbors had boards in like Shillington would push around. There used to be another skate shop called Abydos back in the day.
All right.
And that was run by the Emke family. They're still around the area, super cool people. But like that shop was literally like a stone's throw from my house growing up. So like we would go in there and like there'd be like all this clothing and skateboards and stuff, and it got me all psyched. And I think I went and got like a Goodwill board because I couldn't afford like a normal board, and I pushed around on it. But like if you ever get like a like back in the day, like a Goodwill board or like a 5 and below or like, you know, a Walmart board. You take 2 pushes and they don't go anywhere, you know? So I think I kind of got out of it when I was like 9 and didn't really stick with it because I couldn't really keep up with like my neighbors because they had like legit boards. And then, you know, like the other 2 kept skating that I was skating with in my neighborhood. And then I just kept begging my mom. I was like, you know, I really want a skateboard, you know? So I ended up getting my first board, which was a Tony Hawk board, right before the video game dropped too, because that was like a whole thing too, you know, 1999. So it was like right around that time, and I asked for like months and months, and she was like, "You're gonna break your wrist. I'm not buying you a skateboard." And finally, she gave in, and we ordered the board. I got it from CCS, which is like a, you know, California Cheapskates. It's like they used to send you like a little catalog that had all the stuff you could pick out and everything. So I got my first board, started skating, and then just never stopped. You know, it was like on from there. And like, you know, that's right around the time you go to like middle school and everyone's kind of like finding their identities and stuff like that. And thankfully there was a bunch of kids in my school that like started skating around the same time. We all kind of like networked and, you know, all kept skating together. And then, you know, around that time, my friend Frank Fields, everyone knows him as like Frank Phobia. He plays in a band and like, you know, does a whole bunch of shows around here. And he at the time was opening up Wooden Waves and Sound Waves, which was like an indoor skate park / like concert venue.
All right.
So that was like 2003, I would think. And that was like my freshman year at high school. So like, you know, all of middle school we kept skating, and then Wooden Waves kind of opened up in like 8th grade, 9th grade. And we would go there all the time, like every Friday night. And that's, you know, saw my first pro demo there. Like Kerry Getz came up from Nocturnal Skate Shop. He was a co-owner of that shop, and he was also a professional skateboarder. He used to ride for like Toy Machine back in the day, and then Habitat Skateboards. And he like brought the whole crew from like the skate shop up to do this demo at Frank's Park. And he was sponsoring at the time a younger kid that was my age named Kyle Mickelson, and he was like super good. Like, you know, like all of us were like learning heel flips, and Kyle's like heel flipping over like an entire like kicker ramp, you know, and he's like the same age as us, and we're like, oh my God, this kid's like amazing, you know, he's going to go pro, you know. And we, you know, all kept skating the park, and, you know, we were all like, oh, Nocturnal is a skate shop, you know, because we didn't have a shop growing up. Like there was shops in Lancaster, there was a shop in like Allentown, and like, you know, we would drive, you know, to go get our boards, or we get them on like the mail order, you know. But going to a skate shop was like a special experience. So, you know, just through Kyle getting to skate for Nocturnal, we were like, yo, we have to go to Nocturnal. So that opened up around like right around like 2003, I think, was the first year they opened up in Philly, right on South Street on 3rd and South. And we made the pilgrimage. You know, we would go up, we'd take our parents would drive us down, or like when we got our licenses, we'd start going to the city and like picking up boards from there. You know, we get like 2 at a time. And then like there's a shop in Lancaster that opened up called More Skates, and like I was there for like the second iteration of that shop, but the first one had like a giant indoor skate park that all those dudes would skate.
Really?
Yeah, like Kerry Getz would come, like Bam Margera, like Mike Maldonado, like people, Chris Cole, who's like a huge skater now, like from Pennsylvania, like they would all skate this like indoor park in Lancaster. And then when that park closed, they opened up like a smaller like brick and mortar shop, and we would drive there too and pick up boards and like get their shop decks and like buy like 2 at a time and take them back to Reading, like skate, film videos and stuff. And that was kind of like our introduction to like skateboarding. So like, why a skate shop? I mean, everyone had to do this in high school, but like, you know, you do like your job shadow, you know, most people pick like the PE teacher, like a teacher, like someone local, like your dad or something, or like family member. I just was like, hey, I want to do this skate shop. You know, I want to go to Nocturnal and like work here. And my English teacher was like, you know what? Sounds interesting. Go do it. So I got a pass from school to basically take off for like a day and just go job shadow at Nocturnal. And that's kind of
cool.
like, yeah, that was like my first introduction to like, you know, being behind the counter at a skate shop, being able to like pick out boards. Like Robbie, the manager at the time, was super cool, like was super patient with me. Like I actually had a burned foot because I worked at the Highlands at Wyomissing, which is it's around here, but it's like an old folks home, and I used to cook there, and spilled some water on my foot and got like 2nd-degree burns like 4 days before I was supposed to do this like internship thing. So like I showed up in crutches, like had my foot all wrapped up, you know, and I'm like here to work for the day, you know. So they were super patient with me, like, oh, crutches, like I got to like grip a couple boards and stuff like that, like, you know, help them out. And then at the end they like really hooked it up. They gave me like a shop deck and stuff. It was really nice of them.
That's cool.
So that experience, I was like, you know, basically like for us, like you can go and you can shop online, but like the experience of like coming into an actual skate shop, like a brick and mortar, like you can't beat that. Like you're around your people, you know what I mean? Like skaters, like, you know what I mean? Like you don't get that online. Like you don't get that, like, you know, from going to like a mall shop. Like I know, like, you know, now we have like Zoomies and we have like the Van store and stuff like that. And it's like, you can't hate on places like that because like not every town has a small skate shop,
right?
You know, so if a kid can go get a board, it's like by all means, like get it online, go to a Zoomies, go to like a van store, go wherever you can. But it's like for those kids that can like come into a brick and mortar skate shop and they know they're talking to like skaters and like, you know, like, oh, did you see this video? And you start putting the kids on like, yo, check this Thrasher magazine out. Like, you got to start reading this. Like, it's a whole different experience. And like, usually the kids that are built up through the shops, like the small brick and mortars, like they end up being more immersed in the culture and they end up going further, you know, it's, you know.
No, you're absolutely right. Cause I miss, good old record stores, man. You know, when I was growing up, cause I'm an old dude. We used to go to record shops, check out the latest music, check out, you know, the latest records, guitar shops, because, you know, I play guitar. So you're right. When you go to those brick and mortars, you hang out with the local people. That's where you get your local band starting up. That's where you meet all the cool people. That's where you have your conversations about music. You know, that's why I think I really love the movie High Fidelity for the record store parts of that movie. Because it's exactly what they did in that shop is exactly what I used to do growing up. We'd have like make lists and like who was better, and we felt like elitists, even though we were just a local, you know, idiots just talking about like fucking Metallica records, you know.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and I think like that's a good parallel too, because music and skateboarding go hand in hand. You know, it's such like a cool immersion of cultures. Because like, you know, like skateboarders, like, you know, we're trendsetters. I mean, I'm gonna just straight up say it. I mean, almost every trend that's happened, you know, in the last 15, 20 years has been like started by skaters. You know, whether it's like the baggy pants from the 90s that are back now, you know, or the hip bags that we wear that like all the kids in like the school, like the middle schools are wearing now, or like even like there's a, like when I started the shop, it was 5-panel hats, but we all started that, you know. It's like we do it and then it gets adopted to like mainstream culture and kind of blows up, you know. So it's like music goes hand in hand with that, because like, you know, we're listening to music. We're always trying to find like newer songs to put in like skateboard edits or like videos. And like those video parts for us like defines like a lot of music. You know, you're introduced to music through like, even if you play like the Tony Hawk video game, I mean, like that's like 35 bands you're introduced to right off the bat, you know, and like the punk scene and like the rock scene. And then like, you know, you start listening to like, you start like following other skateboard companies, watching other skateboard videos. Like I remember like my first big video I watched was like the DC video, which was like 2005, I think. And like, that was like my first introduction to rap music. You know, it's like Gangstar. It's like, wow, this is sick. You know what I mean? Like this is like putting me on, you know? So it's cool. Like, you know, even to this day, like Supreme, which is like, you know, one of the biggest skate shops in the world. Like everybody knows it, you know. It's like, but they started out as like a brick and mortar in Manhattan, you know, 1993, and they just put a video out like this week, and it's like Deftones are in it, you know, and like and they use Billy Joel, and it's like that's fucking cool, you know, like it's just
so
rad.
Hip hop is a big part of the skate culture, isn't it?
Oh my god, yeah, it's like hand in hand. Like my friend, so I have a friend that I went to college with named Kyber Jones. Shout out Kyber if you listen to this, but he worked on a documentary with Jeremy Elkins called All the Streets Are Silent. It premiered on Hulu. Like you can just go watch it, or you can like buy it for like $2 to rent it. But it's basically like a documentary showing like the parallels of like early 90s like skateboarding culture and hip hop in New York City. It's a really cool like documentary. It has like a bunch of people in it like from the early 90s, like Keith Huffnagel, who just passed away a few years ago. Like, you know, he was in it, and like he's one of like the pro skateboarders from like Real Skateboards, and like he started his own company Huff that does like, you know, the weed socks and everything. And he's in it giving an interview. Like Rosario Dawson's in it giving an interview.
That's so crazy, because I grew up in Queens in the early 90s, you know, the late 80s and stuff, and I remember hip hop was hip hop, and then you had the metalheads, and then there were some punk kids, but I never saw skaters rocking any type of hip hop culture or anything. So it's just interesting to me, being that, you know, when I grew up in that day, I was actually like a closet metal kid who had to be more urban, so I wouldn't get my ass kicked.
You had to play the part,
yeah, dude, because it was so worse.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough out there, you know. But like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, you can really like. I mean, nowadays, like skateboarders are so more well versed. Like, you know, it used to be like that for us back in the day too. It's like, oh, you're like the rock skater, like you're like the punk skater, you're the hip hop skater, you know. But now I feel like it's more like universal. Like you can like it all, and it kind of all fits now, which is kind of cool. But yeah, there's definitely like, you know, I was introduced to hip hop through like skate videos and through my friends that liked hip hop, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, dude. When you said Gangstar, I was like, holy shit, my man knows Gangstar. I was
the company that I work for, Lakai, we just did a collabo with the Far Side. So it was after their 20-year release of the Bizarre Ride 2.
Yeah,
so
dude.
We just dropped the collabo on like November 24th, which is the 20-year anniversary of like the album, and like, you know, we did 2 shoes and a whole apparel collection, you know, centered around the Far Side, which is kind of cool.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah, we did a Black Sabbath one in 2020, which was really, that crushed it, because through Lakai, we sponsor Riley Hawk, who's Tony Hawk's son, and we did sponsor Tony Hawk for a little bit, and, Riley, we used him and used his shoe and came up with a whole, Black Sabbath collabo, and it crushed it, his sole had, a purple translucent sole on his shoe. It was really cool,
So, do I come to you and tell you that there's so many great-looking shoes out there, but for guys like me that have the widest feet on the planet, do you make wide versions of these dope-ass shoes?
Oh, I wish, man. It's one thing that people ask me all the time. I mean, the good news about skate shoes, it's kind of I try and tell people all the time is if you get a Vans shoe or you get it's called a vulcanized sole. Most people don't know what that means, but there's two types of skate shoes. There's vulcanized and cup sole. Vulcanized is you take the rubber of the sole and you wrap it around the outsole and then you bake it in an oven. So, traditionally what that looks like is a Vans shoe.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a cup sole shoe is just the whole bottom is all one piece, and it gets glued and stitched onto the upper. So, typically cup sole shoes don't really break out a little bit, but if you get a Volk shoe and you wear it for a week and go walking around on some trails, they'll stretch out, you know what I mean? So, I tell most people that have a wide foot, it's if you stick with vulcanized shoes, you get a Vans or every brand makes vulcanized shoes now. It's you get Lakai, S, America, Nike, Adidas, they all make them. So you just got to find that type of shoe and then just break it out a little bit.
Yeah, because I can only wear dad shoes. I've been wearing New Balance for years now.
Oh, we sell, we sell
that wide.
Yeah, we sell New Balance numeric, which is the skateboard line of New Balance, but they don't do their traditional wide sole.
Yeah.
But you can get the vulcanized ones and they stretch out pretty good, and we sell up to size 14 at the shop. So I
gotta check those out, man, because that's the only thing is everybody's got this great sneaker game going on, and I'm I wish, dude, a Black Sabbath shoe, I would have been all over that, dude. But I never really think about it because I'm dude, you're just rocking. I'm a 4E, right? Is that I'm a 4E?
Yeah,
bro. It's ridiculous,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a couple of tricks you could do. I mean, you get the vulcanized shoe. Riley's shoe is a Volk shoe, and that was the one we did the Black Sabbath one on. You can put a stretcher in it, let it stretch. You can buy those, and it kind of you can set it to a wide.
They make stretchers.
They make stretchers for shoes. Yeah, you should look into it. I'm sure Amazon sells them or whoever, and you could grab this thing, put it in your shoe. It just stretches it out over time. And then one of the tricks that the pro skaters do, and I know some other skaters do, is when you skate, you blow through shoes.
Right.
if you're doing it every day, you're going through shoes quick. Most people buy one pair of shoes that lasts them a year, 2 years. We go through 3 pairs in 2 months.
Yeah,
if you're skating every day, because the grip tape, the abrasion, it rips through them fast. So, one of the tricks that they do is these pro skaters get these boxes of shoes and they want them to be broken in. You don't want to skate a stiff shoe. You want it to feel broken in. So they'll take it, they'll pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds, heat it up, put it on their shoe or put it on their foot, and then walk around and kind of break it in that way.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's a little trick of the trade if you listen to this podcast.
All right, that's cool, man. So you got holistic. You're in year 1, man. How you feeling, bro?
Terrified.
Yeah.
Terrible. It was the worst experience because it's I went in, I read a book. It was Business for Dummies, Small Business for Dummies.
I don't put down those For Dummies books because those For Dummies books taught me how to build websites back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, people they like to push them off, but it's at the end of the day, they're written by people who know what they're doing.
And they talk English.
Yeah, it's
they just make it easy for you.
Straight up, So I read that book, got me kind of set up. I kind of had everything ready to go, and then really, I think the only thing that kind of got me a little bit was just taxes. You know what I mean? Which is I was 23 when I opened the shop. It's not I didn't know how to pay my normal taxes. You just go to TurboTax or whatever. But it's different when you start a business. And I ended up trying to get an accountant and everything. And the first guy I picked just wasn't it. I just couldn't I didn't know to do estimated payments and stuff like that.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, so it's at the end of the year, for people listening, if you want to start a business, you can make 4 estimated payments a year that goes into your next tax year. So it's you can kind of almost chip away at it over time instead of getting a huge bill from Uncle Sam at April 15th and you're oh, I owe this much money. Crazy.
Dude.
So, once I kind of got past that, I remember the first year I got hit with a pretty big tax bill. I think it was close to $5,000 and it was pretty hard, So I shout out to my sister, she hooked it up. She came through and helped me out and gave me a loan that I paid back. And, I got through the first year, but it's scary. I mean, on the other side though, after being nervous and scared on that end of it, fucking excited. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
it's like, yo, like I wanted to do this forever. And like the first day we opened up, it was so sick. Like the support from the community was amazing. Like so many kids coming in and like getting their first skateboards or just buying boards. And like, that's like really at the end of the day, like what keeps me going. Like I know it, like, it's hard because like most people see like businesses and they think like we're making a killing, but like small business, like talk to any other small business owner, it's like there's a lot of expenses on the back end that people don't see, and it's like we're not crushing it. You know what I mean? So
You're
it's
just
like,
living.
yeah, we're just trying to get by and live and keep the business open and make a little bit on the side just to kind of keep living. And like, like at the end of the year for me, I didn't start the business to become the next Supreme. You know what I mean? If it happens, that'd be great. But like, I'm there because I want to sell skateboards to like people that want to learn how to skateboard. Like nothing gets me more stoked than like that kid coming in and like grinning from their face, just like
That's
looking.
so true, bro. Because when I took my kid in there, you were like so cool about it. You like, she grabbed a board that she liked. You asked her like what she was gonna do. You saw that she was kind of short, so like you went through the whole thing with her. You picked the trucks, I believe they're called, the wheels, and then you set the whole thing up for her, man.
Oh,
And
yeah.
You sat there, you were talking to me, and I'm just watching your process. I'm watching like how you make the outline on the grip tape and how you're cutting it off. And you sat there, dude. You're the owner. Now, I'm not saying that owners don't do these things, but you sat there. You're the owner. You talked to her. You were talking to me. You went through every step. You set her up, and like she left that joint with like a brand new primo board, dude.
Yeah, and
I
like,
could see the love in what you were doing.
yeah, and I think that's like a huge thing. Like I grew up like at the time, like because like I grew up in different eras of skating. Obviously, like I started skating in the '90s, and like watch that movie that Jonah Hill produced like mid '90s. Like you can get a sense of like how it was back then, like in Los Angeles and everything. Like like you would go to skate shops, and if you weren't part of the crew, you kind of felt like iced out a little bit,
Right.
And I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong. Like some businesses like to make their business that way, like to make it like the cool factor. Like you come in, you buy something, and you keep moving. You know what I mean? But for me, I was always like, like I've had experiences like that, even like when it transferred over to like the Tony Hawk boom, when like all these kids saw the video game and all wanted to get into skating. Like we all had to basically like learn the unwritten rules, which is tough. It's like
Right.
it's like getting into music for the first time or like starting a band, and like there's like things you just don't know about the venues and stuff
Right.
like that. So like you learn the hard way, and it's like going into skate shops sometimes and like just feeling very vibed out. Like I never liked that feeling. So I was like, if I do this, I'm going to do it a different way and just try and make people feel welcome. And like, if they have a dumb question or something, like instead of just being like, you don't know that, it's like, no, I'm going to explain it to you. Like, I'd rather have you walk out and like understand like what you're buying or like, what the product is, and not just like, oh, you don't know this, or like, you don't know like this sneaker release. Like, it's just like, I never felt that was like cool.
Which I appreciated, because I was a dorky dad with my kid who knew everything about skate. Because like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know like all these things about skateboarding. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried it when I was growing up. I had like this simple board growing up, but honestly, I grew up in Queens and it just got stolen. So that's why I stopped skateboarding.
Yeah,
So,
that's like MO for most skateboarders.
I mean, that's what happened. And then I ended up getting a guitar, and then I was all about just, rock music. But it was cool because then I was the dorky dad. I'm like, well, my kid wants a board, so I'm going to go bring her in and get her one. It was during Christmas too, I believe. But yeah, man, it was cool, dude. Because yeah, I get that feeling, man. I remember going into places when I was younger. If I didn't know everything or knew anything about that culture, what was going on, you felt like an outsider. And it still happens to this day. Not everybody accepts you into the different cultures that are out there. So from a dad with a kid, I appreciate you. Thank you for not making me feel weird.
No, I'm like hyped, dude. Like I said, like anyone listening to this podcast, like, if you're into skateboarding, you have like any interest at all, it's like we're here to help you. Like that's how it should be. I think like there's only one way. If you're gatekeeping everybody that comes in the door, it's like, it's not going to help out anyone. Like how is that going to help your business?
How's it going to help anything?
Yeah, it's like how do you grow the culture in the community?
Exactly.
Like exactly, yeah.
And so that takes me to the skate park, man.
Yeah, so I mean that's a long topic, but I'll jump right in.
Let's do it. Let's get in it.
Jump in. I mean, like people ask me all the time. I try and do my best to give updates, and it's like, yeah, like so the whole thing started with I moved back home from Philadelphia. Like Philly was blowing up at the time. Like we still had like Love Park, which was like a downtown like famous skate spot, and then like these parks started popping up all over the place. Like you had like Payne's Park, which was in the works for like almost 10 years, which is like the park that's now on the Schuylkill River banks, like right down the street from like Center City. You can walk to it. Which is like a gigantic, like multi-million-dollar skate park plaza. Like, it took them forever to build it. But in the meantime, these little pocket parks kept popping up. And my friend Jesse Clayton runs a business called Fifth Pocket Skate Parks. and he basically was building these little micro parks, and they were popping up all over Philadelphia. Like Whitehall Skate Park, they came in and like redid that one. They redid like a couple like Gray's Ferry. Like they just there's a whole bunch of cool ones, and like basically the whole way it started was I was already skating these new parks that he was building, and I was like, these are really fun, and we have 4 parks in our county, and we have like Stonecliff, which is like the best one, I think, as far as like maintenance wise and like the ramps and everything. And then we had Hyde Park, which is on 5th Street Highway. Then you have Pineland, which is out in Exeter, and then you have Shoemakersville, which is out in Shoey. And all these parks are basically made the same way. It's very cookie cutter. It's how the towns all made them in 2000 whatever, like the 2000s. They had a sales rep come say like, oh, you have skateboarders? We can build you a skate park. Do you have a tennis court? And they would just come in, they'd take over a tennis court or a volleyball court or whatever had nice ground. Sometimes they would put new ground down before they laid down the ramps. But 9 times out of 10, they just come in and they let the township pick out from a catalog. Like it's a playground book. Like, you're looking at like plastic metal ramps, and then you keep turning the page, and it's like goes from like, elementary school, middle school, like, jungle gyms to like, oh, now you're at skate parks. Right. You know what I mean? And it's like you have this guy who's like a salesman picking out ramps saying like, this is the best selling one, and like telling the town what to buy, and they're just hook, line, and sinker, just getting it. So these, like, we call them prefabricated skate parks. They're all over the suburbs. Like, they just took over, like, and like they would just get cash. And every time like the township wanted to update the skate park, they just go right back to the catalog. They'd remove a ramp, buy a new one, Right. So like all of our skate parks in the area are all prefabricated. They're all like made that same way. And like I kept telling when I first started the shop, I was like, eventually like this company, it's not going to stay in business. You know what I mean? So like if you're relying on their warranties and like all the things they're selling you, it's like, what happens when the company goes out of business? Right. Are they going to come replace your ramp for you when it breaks? No. It's like the right and correct way to build these things is with concrete, because it lasts. And it's like if you get the right PSI, like it doesn't chip, it doesn't spall. Like these prefabricated ramps, like eventually they get old, and like we call them kick plates, but it's like where like the ramp meets the ground, like it starts to separate. And that was already happening when I started the shop in 2012. I mean, you go to Stonecliff now, there's like it wiggles, Oh,
wow.
So if like, your daughter who just got her first skateboard, it goes to drop in on the ramp and like, builds up that courage and that like, self-esteem to be like, I'm going to go for this, and does it, and like comes down the ramp perfectly and catches her wheel on the end and it hits her, she'll just get pitched, So I was like, we have to like fix this, So 10 years ago, I started going to some of the township meetings in the borough, like here in West Reading, and that's where my business is located. And I was like, I want to build a skate park. And it was just, it's like going in there and saying like, I want to start a satanic temple that we like ritualistically murder babies.
I can only imagine.
That was the look that these people were giving me. Like it was all older people that were on this like township borough, and like I even had like my friend Andy Poe come from Home Base Skate Shop, and like he's up in Bethlehem, and he had built like the Home Base. He helped out with like the Bethlehem Skate Plaza, which is like a giant street skating plaza out there. Like worked on that, got it built and everything. And he came and spoke and said like, how crime went down for frivolous calls from like kids skating. Like they had a place to go. Like the police were psyched on it because they could all just go to this spot and like help. And like they can tell the kids like, hey, just don't go there, go to the skate plaza, And it like worked really well with the Bethlehem community. And then I came here and it was just like, no, it's not going to work, and I just kept getting the resistance and the pushback and everything. So, even when it finally like started going through, and like shout out to like, West Reading Rec, because they actually did try and come through and help us out. But it's like the piece of land, the parcel that they looked at giving us at the time was just so small. And it's like, I mean, it was like a quarter of the size of Stonecliff. And it's like, if we build something here, it's going to be cool to have something, but it's just going to get overrun. There's just too many skateboarders in our area, and BMXers and scooter kids and like roller skaters that are going to like all try and crowd this one little thing that we build, and it's just going to be chaos.
Right.
So I went back to the drawing board, and that was like the first 3 years of this, like going to these meetings, trying to find a location and everything. And then when we finally got that site parcel, I was just like, this isn't going to work, and I'm not trying to like say like not like push away an offer, but it's like I know what makes a successful skate park and like what makes it work. And like with skating, it's like, it's hard to tell this to people, but it's like, it's open. You need to have open area, being able to like push full speed and like get to like the speed you want and like cruise and like rip a power slide. That
right.
You need that. And like, especially if you're adding like BMXers into it too. I mean, like kids on bikes flying on ramps, like it's so easy to hit each other. And like we've all gotten along at Stonecliff, which is about like, I'd say like 10,000 square feet. But I mean, it is what it is. Like you feel like you're in a prison cell. Like these prefab parks have these like 10-foot high fences that like go around. And it's just you know, all these skate parks that were popping up around the area, like the Bethlehem Skate Plaza, like York, Pennsylvania, you got Reed Menzer, which is like a really awesome skate park. Philadelphia had Paynes Park pop up and all the other pocket parks around the area. And then, you know, even to this day, like about a year, 2 years ago, like Quakertown just built a really awesome skate park. So I was like just taking this in, and I was like, look, I know what we need to build. And I went to the Tony Hawk Foundation at the time, which is now called the Skate Park Project, and they have like a guidebook, right? And it's basically like a layout of how to build these skate parks, like how to do it the right way. So I ordered the guidebook. I started reading through it, just like Business for Dummies. You know, it's like business. It's like skate parks for dummies. You know, so started reading it, started like figuring it out, and they do like this really cool thing. It's like a skate park square footage calculator. So like you put in like the population of your area, your county, and your city, and it tells you like how big of a skate park you should be shooting for. So I think the parcel that West Reading was offering us was about like 2,000 square feet. Our parcel for Reading alone, not just the county, would have been like at least at the minimum 12,000 square feet. You know,
wow.
So knowing that, I was like, look, I think like they even told me they're like, you're probably better off if you want. They were like, we're a small borough. We're like, you know, we're 5 miles by 5 miles. Go to Reading. They have more space. And like honestly, for me, I wanted it to be in Reading too, because it's like you want it to have access points. Like you want kids to be able to like ride the bus. You want them to be able to like get out of their house and not have to drive in a car to get to it. And like right now, like Stonecliff is on the outside perimeter of the city. So like even if you're in Center City and you ride a bike, it's still going to take you 10 minutes to get to Stonecliff. Walking probably like 30 minutes. You know, it's not accessible to kids without cars. So like, you know, I went back to the drawing board and we met a couple people in the city, and we ended up finding the Redevelopment Authority, which, you know, owns parcels all around the city. And, you know, the guy, Adam Mukherjee, who was the director at the time, was really cool. And like, he's like, I have this site for you. And the original site location was along Rack, where like the bridge, the walking bridge goes over, and that was going to be where the skate park was going to go. And we were all psyched. He like moved the parcel over for us. He's like, you know, now you can go, you have the land put aside. He's like, go get your renderings and go get your pictures, like the picture you saw in the shop.
Yeah.
So we went and did that. And when we went to get a site survey done with an engineering company, they had gas lines going through the entire parcel, like long ways. So like what that means is like if we built the skate park over that, like yes, we could do it. But if there was like a gas break or like any type of like pipe break, they'd have to dig out the skate park, ruin what was ever there just to get to these pipes, and they're not going to replace it the same way because it's specialty concrete. So we went back to the drawing board and we picked a second location, which is the main site for the skate park now, which is at I think it's like 603 Canal Street, which is like this giant parcel of, it's like 1.2 acres, right where Canal Street Pub is and next to Heritage Park and where the Reading Film Studios are. Yeah, like right there. Mm-hmm. So that's the new site location. And we basically, you know, once we picked that out, then we hit up, we picked a whole bunch of different skate park firms that do design and build. And we basically put a portfolio out, and we started this new organization called the Reading Skatepark Association, which is like, you know, it's a whole other tangent, but I'll get into it. But basically, like when I was going to these meetings, I was going as the shop owner, you know, and people just pointed to me and they're like, "You're a skate park," you know, and it's like, you know, I'm trying to do something for the community, but I can't do it alone. You know, it was a lot. So I just got to the point where it was like, I need help. So we all sat down, we called a meeting, you know, I did it on social media, and we had volunteers come out, and we all sat down and we're like, look, we're going to make a nonprofit. Like, it sounds crazy, but it's like not that hard, you know? So we all got together, we worked together, and we filed for a nonprofit, you know, business license and everything. And we ended up calling it the Reading Skatepark Association. So we're a 501c3, like you can make donations and it's tax write-offable. And our mission statement is like to build and refurbish the skate parks in the Reading area in Berks County. So that started in 2016.
Right on.
So, you know, I made it, you know, 4 years after starting my shop, and now I'm starting a nonprofit, you know, and shout out to like everybody involved with that. Like we've had members like over the last, you know, 5-6 years that have come and gone, and like everyone involved with that. Like we were doing like fundraisers, like we would do this one called the Shredding Festival where we had bands play, and like the support was like unreal, and like it was awesome. And so we started that nonprofit, and we grassroots fundraised about like $18,000. You know, we were doing spaghetti dinner nights, like these band shows, like we were doing like, you know, like stuff with like local businesses like Sweet Ride, and just kind of like raising money that way. And we used the initial seed money to hire one of these skate park companies, and we ended up settling on Grindline Skate Parks, which are from Seattle, Washington. They do like amazing skate parks, And Micah, the engineer and designer at the time, came out to Reading, and he like sat down with the kids, and that was the coolest part. Was we did 2 design meetings, and the first one was at the Berks County Community Foundation, and the line was out the door. Like
Wow.
we had one of their biggest meeting rooms too. So like
Right
we
on.
filled that thing, and kids were coming. The line was at the door. It was like BMX kids, skateboard kids, like everyone that wanted to like get involved with the design, and like everyone's voices were heard. So when you look at the design that you see on like the Reading Skatepark Association.org, like the pictures you've seen on like the paper online, like that design wasn't just us picking things and being like, we should do it this way. It's like, no, that was like the kids in the community being like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then, we had to realistically go in from that entire list and shave it down a little bit. But like, this design was 100% like crowdsourced and basically like molded by the local community, which is really cool. And that's what makes it kind of like special, I think,
Yeah,
So we ended up getting the picture and everything. And then, we pushed it through. And the next step was hiring like a local like engineer. So we ended up hiring like SSM, Spot Stevens McCoy, and working with them. And, they started working on the back end of like, engineering like the park and everything. And, at that time, like we only had $18,000, it wasn't a lot of money. And, the contract alone just to get it through like the entire city government and everything, like all the codes and zoning and like, the planning commission, like these are things that people don't think of. They're like, oh, when's the skate park going to get built? And it's like, you should see the red tape that it takes to build something, like whether you're building like a building or a parking lot, like there's a lot. So, it was right around the time I had a really, really rough year. My dad passed away in 2019, and right before he did, my aunt passed away 2 months before that, and my grandmother 3 months before that. So it was like, and my dog too. So it was like 2018 to 2019 was like probably like the lowest point. You know what I mean? Like that was like, I was over it. Like I was like, I don't want to keep pushing the skate park through. I don't want to like do the shop anymore. Like I'm done, like I'm just fried. And I don't know if like my dad was looking out for me or whatever, but like, and then like some of our members like also stepped down from the board, and I was just like, this is like, I don't know how I'm gonna like lead this thing anymore. And like, I don't know if my dad was like looking out for me, but like that, like my dad passed away in January, and I got a phone call in March, and it was from Vans, like the shoe company, VF, and they're owned by VF Corp, which is like from here. And like, I had just done like a pitch just to be like, look, we're trying to build this thing. We have no funding. Like, how are we gonna do this? Like, can you help? And he was like, it was my friend Pat, who I went to school with. He works for Vans, and he was like, yeah, they want to give you $232,000. And I was like, oh, like 2,300. That's cool. And he's like, no, dude, like 232,000. And I was like, hold up a second. I like hung up on him, and I was like, I called him back, and I was like, did you say like 000? He's like, yeah, dude, like VF Corp wants to like fund this thing, like, they want to sponsor it, So we got hit with like $232,000 plus our $18,000. Like we ended up having like $250,000, which is a pretty good chunk. And that was like our initial seed money. And from that money, we ended up hiring SSM, which is like Spot Stevens McCoy, and they went to bat for us, kind of like working through the planning commission, through like the zoning commission, and just doing everything they need. And like, it's tough to tell this to people, but like, not only going to zoning and planning, but it's like we're building this skate park like in a flood zone, like, 30 years ago, or about 40 years ago now, because it's the 1970s, 40 years ago now, 40 or 50, there was a Hurricane Agnes that hit Reading, and like the whole area where the park is going to get built used to have townhouses at it, and the Schuylkill River flooded and just completely flooded all these townhomes. So like they were just demolished. Like there was no way of refurbishing them. So the city just came in and bulldozed them all. So like where we're building this park at used to be like a neighborhood, So the only thing that kind of like throws a wrench and all that is like obviously like there's flood water and site water management, and whenever you're building with concrete, it's impervious. So like you're putting things in that change like the flood zone and everything. So like, not only are we just dealing with Reading now we're pulling Harrisburg into the picture, and we have to get this like NDPES permit, which is like for like drainage and runoff. So we're not like ruining anything in the Schuylkill River. And, shout outs to Spot Stevens and McCoy. Like they went to bat for us. They got us through all the permitting and everything. It costs a lot of money, but like, it took us about 2 years of that, of like the back and forth between the zoning and everything. And that's all done now. Everything's approved, everything's stamped. And now it's just coming down to the funding. Like, how are we going to pay for this thing? Cause we basically used a huge chunk of our cash, and we were like, well, we can go for grant money, and thankfully, like Lynn Burns, who's one of our board members, she had experience working on grants when she worked for the WRCRF, which is here in West Reading, like helped redo like the zone, like help redo like all the stuff on the sidewalks to make it like look nicer. So we just sat down. We're like, all right, let's go for one. So we basically used our money from the van's money as like the seed money for the grant, because most grants work as like a matched funding. So we ended up just applying for this grant, and we ended up like writing it for like I think about 4 months, and we were just like working on it back and forth, and we submitted it. And we're like, that's all we can do. And then we got a phone call like a year later, like or 6 months later, which this is still 2019. So we got the van's money,
All right.
and we wrote the grant around this time, because we knew we had this money and the grant deadlines and everything. So we hear back at the end of September, and we get a call, and it's like, oh, you won the grant. It's 90 grand. Like, congrats. So now we have an extra 90 grand in the pot,
Nice.
and we're like, we're doing this, and we're like, we should try and go for another one. And at this time, we've been working on this completely by the RSA and like us. Like, the city hasn't been helping out at all. We've been doing it, but like the redevelopment authority wasn't technically like owned by the city. It is, but it isn't. So like the land was just kind of put aside for us, but we weren't working with the city yet. So that was like the next step, and I just went and I started pitching it. And the new administration came in. We had Eddie Moran won the mayorship and everything. And he, we called a meeting. We all sat down together, and we started working on ways to like make this park a co-owned by the city. Because at the end of the day, like when it's built, it's going to be a city park.
Right.
So we ended up doing that. Everything went well. The city was like, yeah, like we're going to take this on. We'll try and find some funding for it. And then at that time, the city grant writer at the time, she ended up helping us out with the city to write a grant from DCNR, and that was for a larger amount, like $250,000. And we wrote that grant, and that was 2020, right when the pandemic happened, and we submitted it in March, right when the pandemic took off, and then got a call back in September when they awarded them, and we got another grant, It was for $250,000. So it was amazing. So like now we're like, okay, we got some cash, so how are we going to build this park? And we only have enough money for half of it, so we're like, okay, do we like phase build it, do we build like a section, and then when that gets built, we fundraise again this crazy amount, and then go for the second phase and then the third phase, and keep building and adding on. And we were at the point where I was like, yo, we should just build phase one. Like, people have been waiting like 10 years for this thing. Like, we got to do something, so right when we were about to call the city up and be like, look, let's just exhaust our cash reserves, let's build phase one, we can do phase two and phase three later, like let's just get it going. That was right around the time 2021 we're into now. We're in a year into the pandemic. We had just gotten that grant, and then 2021 comes around, and the American Rescue Plan Act got passed, and they gave a lot of money to cities, townships, municipalities for like projects. So Reading was awarded some American Rescue Plan Act money, and the city's administrators kind of like went to bat for the park, and they were like, look, like we have this park. If we can just use some of this money, we can build the whole thing all in one shebang, and then we don't have to deal with like phasing it out or like coming back to the drawing board later. So they found some extra cash and ended up moving over $1.2 million for us, which is a significant amount. And I can't thank, the city of Reading and all the people in the administrative offices and, the mayor's office for, working with us and seeing the vision for the project. And yeah, they ended up moving that money over to the skate park fund. So now we're fully funded for phase 1 and 2, which, if you're listening to this, it's basically the entire footprint of the skate park. So we're getting both the skateboard bowls, which are basically like swimming pools, and then the street section. So like it's going to have everything. The only thing we're not getting is through phase 3, which is your lights, your shade structures in the bathroom. So we're looking at phase 3 as being like a future build, and that can be like bolt in place. So if we like raise $100,000, we can drop the bathroom in. If we raise $100,000, we can drop the lights in. And just keep going. And that's where we're starting to work with like local corporations and partnerships where like maybe we can reach out and like get a donation from one of them for the amenities, because like it's just going to look good for them. Like when the park gets built, kids are going to use it. It's going to be like a huge draw. So like even if we could partner up and like when you're walking up and you see the sign, said like bathrooms provided by this person, or like lights provided by this person, and that'll be the way that we'll end up getting the $300,000 for that. So
I thought Tony Hawk was involved in getting you guys some cash.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, I glossed over that. But yeah, so Tony Hawk had his foundation, the one I bought the skate parks for dummies from, and at the time that was called the Tony Hawk Foundation. He's since changed the name to the Skate Park Project, just because everyone thinks Tony's like involved and he's going to come to like your opening and stuff like that. So he had to change the name and everything. But yeah, basically tying back to music and skating, they raise their money by doing like, they'll have like Dave Grohl sign a guitar and they'll raffle it off, and the money that comes from that raffling goes into the Skate Park Project's budget, then they award skate park grants for skate park projects all over the United States. So every year they're awarding skate park grants, and they're in increments of like 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, and then the big one is the 25,000. That's like twice a year, 2 skate parks get it. They do 2 rounds of like grants. So you can get it in the beginning of the year, which is like the March deadline, or you can get it at the end of the year, which is like the September one. So rewind back to 2020, I believe. Yeah. So we actually applied for the Tony Hawk Foundation grant at the time and showed them like our design, like showed them like, how much this is going to impact the kids. Like, Reading's an at-risk city. Like, they don't have a lot of stuff for youth development, and we're like, this park is going to change kids' lives, whether they have a skateboard or a bicycle or like a scooter or whatever. It's like giving them a place to go where they can mingle with other kids and like do stuff. It's like good for them. So the board of directors looked at that, and they awarded us the full 25,000, which is the highest grant you can get in like the whole entire country. So
that's awesome, dude. So now you have phase 1 and phase 2 is done. Like you're funded.
Yeah, it's funded. So basically, like what's going on now is SSM is working on the bid package. So this park has to go out to bid, right? So when that happens, because we got grant money, we're using public money, it has to go out to Harrisburg, and Harrisburg has to look at the bid package and say like, this looks good on our end. Like you're satisfying all the requirements from the grant for when it goes out to bid. So that review process usually takes about 3 weeks, and that's what's happening right now as we talk.
Okay.
So when that gets finished and Harrisburg looks it over, they'll probably I'm hoping they give us the stamp of approval. We don't have to go through like more like questions and everything. But if they give us the okay, the thumbs up, it comes back to the city's administration, and then the city is going to do what I think they'll probably do a press release saying like, hey, the park is all approved. There's nothing holding it back now except for putting it out to bid. And then they'll put the park out to bid on PA.gov, which is usually about a month process. And that's any construction project. You put it out on PA.gov, you get bids coming in from all over the state. The bidding's probably going to be for the excavation, the drainage, and the parking lot and the sidewalk. And then since the skate park's a specialty build, and this is like a huge thing in skate park development, like Lancaster County got a park built called the Lancaster County Park. Awesome looking park. If you like Googled pictures of it, it has a full pipe and everything, you'd be like, this is amazing. Kids love this thing. Terrible park. Like just you can't skate it because they had a sidewalk company come in and build the transitions, and they just don't meet right. You pump the wall and you just stop.
Why would you have a regular concrete company do that?
Because they put it out to bid, and it's just like they were the cheapest for the job. They won the award. So what we did was we did a sole source with Grindline Skate Parks, the designer, where they can do the specialty version of the skate park because these skate parks are specialty. It's like building a pool. Like you can't have someone come in and just build a pool. You need like a specialty pool builder. So with skate parks is like with the transitions and the radiuses and everything, you need to have a specialty builder. So what's going to happen is like the park will go out to bid. When it's awarded, the GC will come in and they will dig out the excavation. They'll put the drainage in and everything. Then they'll leave the site. Grindline will come on. They'll start forming everything, putting the rebar down and shotcreting everything and doing it section by section. And they'll finish all 22,000 square foot of like the skate park section because it's all specialty. And then when they finish that, they'll leave. And then the GC will come back on the job and do the parking lot, the sidewalk, and the landscaping.
And when's that going to be done?
I'm hoping. I mean, this is it's tough. It's
a magic question.
Definitely 2023 at some point. The build's going to take a little longer because you have to think at the end of the day it's 22,000 square feet of impervious concrete. You want to make sure it's done right, and you want to make sure like the PSI of the concrete's done correctly so it doesn't spall or crack in the wintertime. So like I want them to work slow and do it right. So I'm gonna say like it's about an 8-month build. When
so
it's
23, 24 maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Early 24, late 23.
Yeah, I would. That's me being like very understanding. Now, if they get to the site and they're feeling it and they bring 2 crews on and they're really jamming, they could probably get it done in like 4 months if they're working and hustling. Right. It all comes down to manpower and if they can get the crews on the job and everything. So if that happens, if they can start construction in like March, April, May, they could be finished by like September, October. Typically you don't want to start construction in the wintertime because of the frost line and everything. Obviously. Like it's harder to dig through. Like the concrete's harder to work with. It can crack, spall. So we'll see. I'd say like I'd love to see it start construction in March or April.
All right.
My birthday's in April. That'd be sick.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Dude, JD, I just want to thank you, man, because I mean, it was your idea, dude. And like, I mean, you just went through I've just been sitting here listening to everything you've been talking about. And when you really think about it, I mean, you're a kid with a dream. You worked at a local skate shop and you said, you know what, I have the opportunity to take it over, and you did. So you had enough, balls to do that, because starting a business is not easy. Anybody will tell you that's done it. It's scary as hell. It's not easy. You went ahead and did that and went from a kid who was just scared to take this place over and be able to make it after a year to a man who's essentially now responsible for what's probably going to be the fucking coolest skate park in Pennsylvania. Like, dude, it takes people like you to build a community, to build a great neighborhood, to make Reading a place where people want to come to and chill, man. So if anything, my brother, you have definitely and will leave a legacy of being the dude that had a dream to build a cool ass skate park in his old stomping grounds. And you're going to give tons of kids just a cool place to chill for decades to come, man. So I just want to say thank you for being that dude.
No, I appreciate that a lot. And the idea wasn't mine entirely. Like I said, it's been years of seeing all my friends do it in their respective communities. And
Sure.
it's you want to just make sure you can take what you're learning from other areas and apply it where you're at. And that's I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken away from it is because I came from Reading, you know what I mean? I've heard,
Yeah,
you're from here,
I'm actually an import, but
you're an import too. Yeah, sorry. But when you're from here, you know what I mean? It's we have a really unique community here in Reading where it's it's a lot of transplants and it's a lot of local people. And we're at the point now where it's very infused. And it's you still have people that are scared to go to the city and stuff like that. And it's it's at the end of the day, we're street skateboarders. So we're downtown all the time. We're skating downtown Philly. We've seen stuff, but it's I want to build a community where people feel good to walk around again, and part of that is just, with the skate park, I know it's kind of an out there thing, but it's if you're bringing more people to the downtown area that are using it and you're giving them a space where they're coming into the city and activating it, the more activity you have in an area, the less bad stuff happens. That's just proven. You know what I mean? When there's just darkness and no one's around, that's when the worst stuff happens, So, I just want to see that built up again. And it all starts with people having dreams and having ideas. And if you're listening to this podcast and you want to do what you want to do, just go for it. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't just start with one person, it starts with a community. And if we're all working together and, trying to achieve our dreams in this small area, we'll make it a better place, and that's what I want to see, as I get older is I want to leave an imprint, but I also want to see Reading get better,
JD, man, I couldn't put it better myself, brother. JD, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it, brother. You know what? Tell them how they can support.
Yeah,
Park,
if you want to support us, you can definitely come by the shop anytime. We're located in 516 Penn Avenue in West Reading. We have a brick and mortar there. It's open every day of the week except for Mondays. If you don't live in the area, we have a web store that has everything in the store online, so you can just order a board to yourself, shoes, clothing, whatever you need. It's all on there, and that's holisticskateshop.com. And if you want to give us a follow, you can hit us up at holistic_skateshop for Instagram and Facebook, and also at Reading Skateparks for any of the skate park updates.
Thank you, brother. We'll have you back on real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Fred Talk. If you totally got into what you just saw, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss another episode. Check out the playlist because there's other cool people too. And if you can't watch all the time, check it out on any podcast outlet. Don't forget, your Uncle Freddie loves you. Peace.